So, sex and dreams. Most of us have had at least one dream, many of us multiple dreams, about having sex. And they tend to be very intense dreams, both emotionally and physically. So, what's that all about? Well, the idea of sexuality being in a dream has many, many different interpretations, none of which I think are particularly useful. However, I came across an article 6 months ago that really put a different light on the whole idea of sexuality in dreams. And I want to read you an excerpt from it. It's from the New Yorker, and it's called The Secrets of Sleep. It was written by a guy named Jerome Groopman, Gropman, on October 16th, 2017, if you want to look it up. And in this article, he quotes a guy named Meyer Kryger, Kryger, I believe, yeah, who teaches at Yale Medical School. And I'm going to read you an excerpt from Kryger's book, the first part of which is no news. So he's talking about REM sleep being the enigmatic state. And he says, during this phase, almost all of the muscles are paralyzed except the diaphragm, which allows us to continue to breathe, and certain sphincters at the top and the bottom of our gastrointestinal tract. Meanwhile, the brain shoots off electrical storms, resulting in rapid eye movements of the eyes, and we start to have vivid dreams. Here's the interesting thing. He says, and every time a man dreams, he has an erection. And every time a woman dreams, the blood vessels of her vagina become engorged. Now, these changes in our genitalia are apparently unrelated to sexual thoughts before sleep or sexual content in the dreams themselves. Rather, erections and vaginal engorgement seem to be the result of the state of dreaming itself. Well, that was news. So what's that all about? Well, there's an idea out there that basically says we have confused eroticism or confined it to sexuality. And in fact, eroticism, this feeling that we have, can be applied to any interaction we have in our lives. And actually, perhaps one definition of living a healthy life is that you live erotically. Now, that's the story about my distant ancestors, the Celts, lived erotically. And we can find that in a lot of their art and what they've left behind. But in today's society, as I said before, the erotic seems to be confined to the sexual. Now, you know, we all come from different lineages, and there are epigenetics associated with those lineages. Mine is Scots-Irish. Other people are Jewish. There's a whole Black experience in America. And epigenetics are real, and they do manifest in dreams. But there is also, in this country, in the United States, the epigenetics of being an American. What's that about? Well, this country was founded, if you go back 100 years before the Declaration of Independence, and even farther than that, by people who felt that the medieval English church was too liberal. And if you think we don't suffer from that still, I would suggest think again. We have a huge range in what we decide is good and evil, based on the prognostications of those folks who got on those boats and came over here and began to set up the beginning of the country. So what do we do about that? Well, eroticism is, in fact, the energy that drives change in us. How is that? Well, let me digress for a minute. Many times people come to me and to other folks because they don't want something, right? They want to get out of a relationship that they feel is destructive. They want to get out of a job where the boss is horrible. They're in a career that doesn't satisfy them. They don't want that, okay? A lot of us start from that place. And clarity around all the destructive pieces of whatever that is useful. But you can't really go anywhere from there. Not wanting something is a starting place, but you got to want something for there to be change. Well, what would you want? What you want is to feel better on a very base level. But what you really want is eroticism. What you really want is you want to be engaged in something that makes you fulfilled. And that is a want, that is a desire. So usually when sexuality comes up in a dream, it's about that want, it's about that desire. So let me give you an example. There was a man who had a dream in which he was sitting across from a woman that he'd had a relationship with. It was a very important relationship to him. Didn't work out. But he always thought about it as something that was very important to him. And in the dream, the woman is sitting cross-legged opposite him, and she's completely naked. And he's sitting there fully clothed. And they're talking. And as they talk, without even trying, without even unbuttoning anything, all of a sudden, over time, his clothes disappear. And the two of them are sitting there talking to each other. And not only talking to each other, but their knees are touching and their hands are touching. And he woke from that dream feeling like he had never felt before in his life. It was an absolutely wonderful feeling. Now you can look at that dream and say, well, there wasn't any sex. No, there wasn't. But there was a tremendous amount of eroticism. It was about that connection to another person and honoring that connection to another person. So sexuality is our representation in this culture these days of what the erotic is all about. Now, let me digress for a minute and talk about the fact that I teach this class to other practitioners and coaches around dreamwork. And we get to a point in the class and some people say to me, well, what do I do, if a client brings a dream to me where they're having sex with me? It happens. Why? Well, probably because what's going on is a very intimate relationship, not unlike that dream I just told you about. And a unique relationship, most likely, in the life of this client. And so, of course, they would be attracted to you. And of course, they may have a dream in which they're having sex with you. But what is the utility of that dream? What do you do with that dream? Well, you basically say, look, yeah, this is what you want. You want the kind of intimacy that there is in this relationship, which is a one-sided relationship. It's not going to do you any good, really, to go down that road in your thinking, but it is an example of what you can have, what you desire, what you want. So my message here really is that sex in dreams is about desire, and it's about wanting something. And usually when those dreams start showing up, you have moved away from what it is you don't want and have begun to identify what it is you do want. And by that, I don't mean some exterior thing like, a better career or a nicer boss or a better lover. They'll probably all show up, but that's not the desire. The desire is that feeling, that erotic feeling. So what I do for a living, really, at the bottom of it all, is I work with the erotic. I work with, what do you want? How do you want it? How do you get it? And yes, it always starts with what you don't want. But when you have one of those dreams with sexuality, usually it's a turning point. So I hope this was useful. Take care of yourselves.